Hello and welcome back to the Humane Cities podcast. Today, this is our third episode, and I'm chatting with another Calgarian, which we love, Alanna de Boer. Welcome onto the podcast. How are you doing?
Good. How are you?
Good. I am doing so well. It is raining outside. That's why I'm wearing this kind of light rain jacket. It's like in memory of the rain that's going on that I will not be going out into today because, as we were saying before we hit record, why would you go out in the rain? You can't bike in the rain. You can't do anything in the rain. Um,
And
can you
you?
bike in the rain? Can
Like
you?
the rain.
Do you know? Okay, so we'll start off with this conversation on cycling in what some people might consider inclement weather. If you are watching the video of this episode on YouTube, you'll be able to see this in a second here. But this is cycling in in the snow. This is on Alanna's Instagram page. Can you tell us a little bit about your commitment to cycling?
Yeah. Well, we had two cars a few years ago, and I was just tired of the two-car bill life and spending all that money. So started. I had always watched Not Just Bikes, but really started to dive into some of his videos about how they switched their mindset around having kids and getting around their city. And that video that he has where he shows a kid's perspective from the front of this style of bike just blew my mind, and I became obsessed and realized that we have these available to us in Canada. So we ended up selling our second car. And people talk to me all the time about how I'm so hardcore and I will bike in all weather conditions. And I will, mostly because I'm stubborn, but also because I have no other choice. So my choice is either I ride my bike and maybe I have to push it along the sidewalk here and there, or I walk with a 7-year-old who will probably take 5 times as long. So usually I just choose the bike, and I'll put up with a lot of really terrible snow squalls and wind and rain and all types of weather. And then you kind of just get used to it, and it kind of becomes this funny thing that you do that people comment on all the time.
Yeah, yeah, and the getting used to it thing is so interesting, and I'm curious when you started getting into, having a cargo bike and biking everywhere and walking everywhere and all the rest of what comes along with that. Was it as hard as you were expecting? Was it as frustrating as you were expecting, or was it easier? What's your feeling on that?
It was often easier than I was expecting. I think when you drive all the time, there is this perception that the city that we live in, Calgary, is cold all winter and that winter is 8 months of the year. Calgary doesn't actually have that many cold days. I think we average 14 below -20. The main problems that I run into are that it's harder to get a bike through a snowdrift than it is to just walk. Previous to having a bike and not working downtown or working downtown, I walked all the time. We live 45-minute walk from downtown, and I was already the crazy girl who was always walking. But we live along pretty good bus routes. I just am very frustrated with waiting and uncertainty. And so for me, having a predictable 45-minute commute was nicer than maybe having a 20-minute commute sometimes, and or maybe missing the bus by a minute and then having to it taking me 45 minutes anyways. I would just rather be moving and listening to a podcast or listening to music or just enjoying the walk. We have beautiful views in Calgary. I used to take a picture every single day from the top of the bluff in Crescent Heights overlooking the entire city. I had thousands of pictures from when that was my route for at least 8 years. So yeah, I was already a little bit used to the idea that Calgary isn't quite as cold as people make it out to be. But Calgarians are also like really stubborn
Hmm.
and don't dress for the weather. I don't know if it's because we're like such a driving city or it's just like a culture thing, but like my husband like didn't have winter boots.
It's so weird. So, okay, so a few years ago, because I was like that. I'm like, well, I don't look cool, and also downtown has like there's a specific style of clothing that the downtown office worker will wear. Like it is a unique,
Yeah.
like I'd be really interested almost to do like an ethnography of downtown fashion in Calgary because it is different. Like people who work in downtown offices in Calgary dress differently from the rest of the human beings that live in the city, even if they are still office workers. But if they work in a downtown office, there's like a different look. This is just something I've been noticing. But it's like we are stubborn and a few years ago I decided that I had had enough, that I was like, I'm gonna dress for the weather no matter how silly I look, no matter how bundled up I have to get. And what I realized in doing this is that it's not very often that I actually have to bundle up. Like
Yeah.
it's really not very often. So a few years ago I bought like the big, thick winter boots, like rated for -40. You can go outside and you will not feel it. Like I've worn those boots for a half-hour walk outside in -40, and like my feet were toasty warm the whole time, no problems. I wore those boots 0 times this past winter.
Yeah, it wasn't very cold.
0 times because it just wasn't needed. I just, on the days that it happened to be that cold, I was lucky enough to not have to go outside, and it didn't get that cold that often. And so, yeah, we way overblow, whenever I remember being in university and I would always tell people, I'm like, oh, I'm Canadian, so like this weather is no problem. I was in the States, and I'm like, this weather's no problem. This weather's no problem. And then, and then if somebody else said something like that to me, like, oh, you're Canadian, so you must be used to this, I'd be like, what the hell are you talking about? And I would like get offended by it. I'd be like, Calgary has beautiful winters, and it just like it's a Schrodinger's cat kind of thing of
Mhm.
like we have beautiful, beautiful weather when we're trying to convince people to come here. And when we're trying to convince our city not to build bike lanes, we have just horrible, awful, the worst possible weather. You
Worst
know?
weather.
Yeah, and I'm sure other cities are a little bit like that. But you started getting into it. How long have you been doing this?
We sold our second car in October 2023. So I've just done my third winter.
Nice, nice. And do you have any sense of how much money you've saved from doing this? Yeah.
Yeah, I spoke at council about exactly this when we were talking about repealing rezoning. And so I did the math on what we were spending on that car, and it was pretty cheap. It was paid off. It was an older vehicle, so we didn't have like car payments to add to that. And I also didn't drive that much, which is what makes replacing the car with a bike easy. I'm mostly like shuttling kids to like school, daycare, getting groceries, that kind of stuff. So we were like well under the like 10,000 kilometers a year on that vehicle. And I think we spent like 4,000 a year. So not nothing.
Not nothing at all, especially, I mean, what are the recurring costs you have on your bike, right?
Not much. I don't change my own tires.
Hmm.
So I run like a winter like studded tire half the year, and I get our local bike shop, Bike to change those out. I think he charges like $40 to do it. And then like things break like they do on a car, so every once in a while there'll be something, but it's like instead of being in the thousands, which was we were at that point with the 2012 car where we're like, oh, we have to replace a clutch. There's like
Great.
$3,000. Um, yeah, the bike is more like a couple $100 at the most if there's like something crazy. Like my seat broke the other day. No, the other week. And I had to replace that. It was like $100 or like $130.
Right, right. It's crazy. It's crazy. I remember when I started cycling more, it had been 6 years since I'd had a bike at all. and I just sold my car. I was like, I gotta, change this lifestyle, and and so then, but then I popped a tire on my bike, and I was just like, oh man, this is so frustrating. And then you go get a new tube; it's a few bucks, basically, right? Like it was so much easier to do the care and the maintenance on bikes than it is on a car. You also mentioned doing some housing advocacy, but is cycling advocacy your main thing?
Yeah, cycling advocacy is definitely like the route that I've chosen to go because there's so many things to care about, and I really do care about the housing side of things. So I'll like lend my voice when I can. But cycling is like the thing that gets me more excited than anything. And like particularly like cycling for children and how like they can get independence, and like navigate their own cities, is just like really close to my heart having two children.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that's something that the cargo bikes are amazing for. Is like they are like that second car replacement, potentially like your only car replacement, depending where and how you live, and you can bring kids along for it. So I want to pull up a clip from Critical Mass the other night. We're recording this on a Sunday. Critical Mass was just a couple days ago, and you have an amazing 360-degree camera.
I do, yes.
And let me see where this. There we go. Perfect. So here's a video of you cycling along. You've got your two kids in the front there. There are some other cargo bikes in view as well, which is amazing. How was this Critical Mass? How many people were out to this?
It was so awesome. I think there were like more than 500 people. I would love to hear if anyone actually got a count. It was probably the biggest one I've been at. And we're saying that like every year. I think it's like, oh my God, that May one or that June one was the busiest Critical Mass we've ever seen. But it was great. There was so many cargo bikes, so many more kids than are normally out. Like my daughter's friend is like riding beside us here. She did the whole route on her own, which was like, it was over 20K. And then there was like another little girl from their after school program that was riding her own bike. I think I saw like 4 or 5 Urban Arrows, which is the like back feet box bike style that I have. And then so many long tails. Yeah, it was really cool. It was great.
Give me your since you mentioned long tails and Urban Arrows, the back feet. Give me your take on the variety of e-bikes and cargo bikes. Like what should somebody get? What should somebody be thinking about when they're like making this consideration to maybe replace their second car with a cargo bike?
Yeah, there's so much out there on the market. I think the like main things that I think about or was thinking about when we were looking, were whether the battery has a legitimate certification. Because you're spending a lot of money, and like having that certification, that peace of mind that it's not going to catch fire is really important. So like the Bosch ones are UL certified. I think there's like a couple other certifications that are like legitimate. That would be probably the very first thing. If I'm like looking at one and I see a really good deal, I would be like, what is the battery situation? And then that also kind of speaks to like whether or not a bike shop will service it. Because even if you like do know how to like fix your bike, I do not. I take it to a shop always. I don't know anything about fixing a bike. If you're getting into like some of those direct to consumer brands, then they might have like specific components that are one-offs, and a bike shop's not going to touch it. So those are the two things that I would like consider first. And then it's just kind of like what you feel most comfortable with. Longtails are like a really good like entry bike because they are usually a little bit cheaper than the style that I have, which has the box on the front and the kids are like loaded up front. And they feel, when they're not loaded, they feel more like a regular bike. You're not like, there's nothing to get used to. Like with a box bike, the first time you ride it, it's gonna feel weird and you're probably gonna like tip over. But it'll also teach you that it's like really not a big deal to tip over in them. but there's no real learning curve. I would say that like once you do have cargo on a long tail, they are harder to ride. Because you just feel every single shift, but you can't
Yeah.
see it because like the
Right.
kids are behind you. So if they like shift to the right, you're not seeing that and you're just like reactionary all the time versus with the box style where they're in front, you can always like see their movements and you can almost anticipate what's going to happen. The reason that we chose the back feet was mostly like not just bikes, but I also talked to a lot of people who lived in winter cities, and the center of gravity is a lot lower. So when you're in the snow and the slush, it's a lot easier to stay upright, especially like when they're fully loaded. I also had one of those like front seats on my regular bike for my youngest, and the joy that she got from like being able to see all the time when she was up front was just like incredible. She would like every time we went down a hill, she would just be like, "Wee!" And like she was just like it felt like she was like part of the ride. We had like one of the seats that went on the back with my oldest, and she loved it, and it was like a great entry to like this is what biking with your kids can be like. But she like often was just like patting my butt or like patting my back and like focused on like me instead of like us enjoying the bike ride together, if that makes sense. The other style of bike I would say that is like really great for winter cities, if you were like wanting to commute year round, is like a trike, like a bunch bike, or I can't think of any of the other brands, but like where it has like a full box with two wheels on it. They're just like really stable at slow speeds, which a box bike is not. Like under 10 kilometers an hour, my bike is very hard to maneuver. So in a ride like Critical Mass, when you're in like a crowd, it gets like very, very wobbly and a little sketchy. But trike solves that. Like you don't have to like worry about balancing or any type of stability, and you can really get through like snow. There's an influencer on, I think she's on Instagram, mostly on TikTok, from Edmonton, and she has an Urban Arrow and a box bike, and she chooses the box bike most of the time when it's really snowy.
That's some interesting insight into, what somebody might want to consider if they're looking at getting one of these. I know some of the bigger brands, like if you go Reese and Mueller or Urban Arrow, they also have a lot of accessories that you can do. I know, like I've seen I know somebody who has the Urban Arrow, and they have the kind of canopy over it. That's great. If you're riding your kids somewhere in the rain, especially if this is like your car replacement,
Yes.
that's something you might want to consider. And I do think on the price note, an Urban Arrow, yeah, okay, you're going to spend upwards of $10,000, right? It is not a cheap bicycle, but it also, if this is replacing a car, that that might be worth it to you, especially with the long term savings. You mentioned that you're almost 3 years without this second vehicle,
Yeah.
and that you were spending about $4,000. Well, you're coming up on the Urban Arrow completely paying for itself, and it'll probably last you a few more years, right?
Yes.
And so there's a lot of different things to consider. I think if somebody's looking into getting a bike, but you've really like I feel like you've become like a cargo bike person. Like this is like
It's
this
my
this is a big
personality.
thing for you. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Which is I mean, it's a great personality to have. Everybody loves it. Um, and and you have taken on this big role in like urban and family bike advocacy. I think one thing that you do is Critical Mass, which is like critical mass, but for kids. Can you tell me a little bit about Critical Mass? Like, how do you set it up? What differs about Critical Mass versus Critical Mass? Yeah, I'll let you just dive into it.
Into it. Yeah, Critical Mass. We started. I had another parent, or another Urban Arrow parent, cargo bike parent, reach out to me and say, like, I think this is missing in our city. last summer. At the time, we were like organizing like maybe quarterly. We would send out a Facebook message to like the Alberta Cargo Bike families group and say like, let's do a ride, let's meet up at a playground or like a coffee shop and like get together and talk about like cargo bikes and whatever else interests us, community. And we were kind of like, this isn't enough. Like, it's just like not reaching enough people. It's not often enough. You can't like rely on it happening. So she kind of reached out to me and said like, what if we did this together? And started this ride. And I was like, I think this is a great idea. And like, now's the time. Let's do it. So we started planning, or I mostly took over and started planning it. I ran with it. And we had our first ride in August 2025. And basically we pick a route that goes from a coffee shop to a playground. And it is very similar to Critical Mass in that we're riding on the road. We're trying to be visible. But the biggest difference is that we are trying to like show the like joy of biking to these children and have them like develop a love for cycling. So it's more fun and like lighthearted and less like, I don't actually find like the Critical Mass ride that protesty. But that is its like roots. It's like meant to like be a movement that says we are here and like we deserve to take up space on the road. And Critical Mass has that as like a background, but the main thing is like, let's get these kids on bikes. Let's safely ride. Let's show parents how to like safely do this on the road in a big group and ride in like a mass and like get these kids loving it from an early age. And I think like my goal with Critical Mass and my like why is that I want my kids to like have those independence skills. I want them to be able to like bike themselves to a soccer practice, to school, wherever they need to go, so that like I can have that time back and be like a better parent and a better community member and a better wife and a better friend, because I'm not burnt out from just like running around town trying to like be a full-time employee and a full-time parent and doing neither of them well. So that's my ultimate goal with it. And yeah, the kind of like differences, they're like very subtle differences, but I think you can really like feel it if you watch like a Critical Mass video versus a Critical Mass video. I do find that like Critical Mass has, since it's come back to Calgary, has done a really good job of like bringing that joy back. I think it was like a lot more angsty 20 years ago. And now it is like much more like primarily joy, but also like, we're here, we're taking up space.
Yeah, and it is interesting. At Critical Mass, you get all types, right? And you get all types of cyclists, which is good. And I'm not that angsty of a person. I think I like to describe Critical Mass as a parade. It is a parade of bicycles showing that there are people who ride bikes in this city, and that we should have safe, proper infrastructure to use. And one thing that I love about what you're doing with Critical Mass is that it does get like kids involved in the joy of biking, and probably teaches them a thing or two about safety as well. It also is easier and safer already for kids to bike when they are in a big group, right? There is a big safety in numbers thing. So I think that's fantastic. But then you also, in the same vein as Critical Mass, you have a bike bus. Can you tell us a bit about bike buses?
Yeah. Oh, I love Bike Bus so much. I don't know which one I love more. So Bike Bus is essentially a movement that started a few years ago by a guy named Sam Balto. He's in Portland now. I think he originally started it with walking buses or walking trains, they sometimes call them, in the east coast of the States. And so it's basically like you get a bunch of kids together at a starting location, and then they walk together to school. And kids can join like along the route at other points. And yeah, you can do it either walking, biking, any kind of rolling, any kind of transportation that is like kid centered. So basically anything but a car. And yeah, it just gets kids out there moving before they start their school day and have to like sit inside probably for 6 hours. And yeah, it just gets them out of the vehicle and out of the drop-off line and gives like those parents, because with Bike Bus, the main thing that's different from Critical Mass is we will allow parents to just like drop their kids off, and we will volunteer to like get them safely to school. We have like a leader, and then like I'm usually the sweeper for Bike Bus. And I just like make sure that if anyone falls, like I am the last line with cars and I can like stop anything and make sure that no one gets left behind. But yeah, just a like safe, active way to get to school and start your day off with some like fun and joy and your friends.
I love that. I think that's wonderful. Are there other bike buses in Calgary, or is yours the only one?
I think ours is like the OG.
Okay.
The other one that I'm aware of is Sam Livingston in it's a South Calgary.
Yeah, it's in Bonavista. I went to Sam Livingston Elementary actually. Yeah, when I was little, I didn't live close enough to be able to bike, but yeah, I've chatted with I forget what his name is now.
Kyle.
I'm just blanking on it, but yeah, that's right. And they do a few other group rides down in South Calgary, which is great because I think it's important that like cycling around isn't just I live in a dense urban neighborhood activity. Cycling is really great for people of all ages in all sorts of densities. It is a way that you can get places faster, safer, more independently than relying on your parent to drive you around, right? Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting because I actually think some of the more suburban, I guess like the like donut of decline neighborhoods, are probably easier to start a bike bus in. I just haven't heard of any of them doing it, but I was listening to an old podcast of Sean's from like 10 years ago probably, and they were talking to someone in Tuscany, and it sounded like they had like so many kids biking to the Tuscany elementary school because they have that like multi-use pathway network. They have like the wide roads and everything, but I think they have like more kids that are like coming from within the community versus my school. Our bike bus will only ever get so large. We have our catchment area is massive because it's French immersion. So we're pulling from like communities that are like a 20 to 30 minute bus ride away. We have 5 buses full of kids coming to the school, at least 5 buses. And lots of parents who like drive their kids because they're coming from so far, and they'll like hit the school on the way into like their job downtown. But I think there's like some real opportunity for some of these neighborhoods to capitalize on that. And so Kyle and I are actually going to be at Cycle Fest, which is like this revival of a former event this year that is celebrating cycling. And it's going to have a trade show. So we're going to talk about like how to start a bike bus so that other parents in other neighborhoods can start it. I think Sam Balto has like really brought the like influencer side of things to the bike bus movement. I repost his videos all the time because he gets like hundreds of kids biking in his bike bus, and he had Justin Timberlake riding a bus. He had like a couple other artists, like Benson Boone I think did, Zara something, I can't remember her name. Anyways, he's had like big names ride the bike bus with him, and he has these like massive speakers, and like the videos are so addictive. I'm like very curious to see like what his drop off rate is on Reels, because like I feel like I can watch those all day. They're just like so amazing.
Yeah, it is really impressive. I mean, and I think in order for us to advance some of these things and get the broader population feeling like they can get engaged and involved, it is important that, we have a little bit of virality to it, that it does get out there to people. One note real quick before we move on with something here. Cycle Fest you mentioned. So I'll be at Cycle Fest as well, but representing Calgary Transit riders. And we'll be talking about bike etiquette on transit and things like that. So we're looking forward to participating in Cycle Fest as well. I think this will release before Cycle Fest happens. So Cycle Fest, for anybody listening who are in the Calgary area, will be June 6th, 2026, at the Confluence. So now that I've said that, I want to share another video, speaking of virality and such. And I shared this when I interviewed Biz as well. Oh my goodness, I have too many tabs open. Let me close them so that I know. There we go. Okay, this is the one that I want. Okay, here we go. So this is a video that you made with Unsprawling. Biz is there filming, and Stephanie is there interviewing you. Tell me a little bit about making this video and some of the reaction that has come out of this video.
Yeah, this video is so fun. So Stephanie had approached me at a More Neighbours event and said that they were thinking of doing this series about like how do you move around Calgary, and thought that I would be like a great person to interview with like how I move around Calgary in my bike. And so we set up the interview, and then a couple days before, Biz sent me a message and was like, "Could I fit in the box of your bike?" I'm like, yes, you can. Like, full adults can fit. Like, I've biked my husband around. I've biked, like, our friends around. I'm like, I can't guarantee that we won't, like, fall over, because the more weight you add, the more wobbly it is. But you can certainly fit in that box bike. And so they climbed in, and we rode around. Since I've, like, done this way more often than not, I like am more used to carrying this amount of weight, and I did not dump Biz. I thought I might at the very beginning, because like we started at the school, because that's my main commute, and it's a square curb and then a painted bike lane on 10th Street, and so I was like, okay, I gotta get the bike into the lane, and then it's on the kickstand, and you have to basically like pull it back to get going, or like push it forward, I guess. Either one, but it's like pretty jarring. And right as I was doing that, you can see in the video there's a cop that starts like driving, and I'm like, they must be just like, what is going on with these people? Because Stephanie was like riding her bike behind me, and like I'm just laughing hysterically because it's like, it's ridiculous, especially because Biz was facing backwards towards me. There's no seat they can get a seat in that position, but we don't have one in our bike, because it's like $350 or something.
That's crazy, and it's basically like a piece of styrofoam. Right?
Yes, yeah. Which I'm like, I think they might not have been able to actually like fit on that seat if it was there. It's pretty small. It's like very narrow at the front. But yeah, the whole like it was just like a hilarious way to film, and they kept being like, you can't really tell for sure with the original angle that they were filming at that it was from the box. So then they did like 0.5 for the camera, and then you can like really see their knees. But yeah, it was a very fun interview to do. And then my favorite part, because I'm also like very passionate about like community building, I feel like I'm passionate enough about it that I started a podcast with a friend. I just feel like it's really like lacking in our world, especially for parents, but for everyone. And one of my favorite things is that we like biked over to Balmoral Circus, which is this like lovely park in Calgary. a couple blocks from my house that used to be like an intersection. I think it was part of like City Beautiful a long, long time ago, where they like built a like circular park in the intersection on the like corners of the grass, but then you still could drive through the center of it. And 2 or 3 years ago, they closed it and built like just like a full park with a bike lane that goes through, and then like places to sit. They just made it like really nice. So we pulled in there, and we were talking for a second, and all of a sudden I hear like, Alanna! And it was my friend that also runs, like started our bike bus originally like 4 years ago when her kids were younger. She just like happened to be coming home from downtown and like ran into us, and I was like, this is what I love about bike commuting. And I'm like so happy that it got captured in this interview, because it was just like we had been talking about how wonderful it is to just run into people all the time. And the biggest difference with like driving versus like walking, biking, taking transit is that like you're excited when you see other people using that mode of transportation, and you get to like say a quick hello, how are you doing, or like maybe catch up and ride a couple blocks together, versus like in a car, like you're kind of annoyed when there's too many cars on the road. So it was like really cool to get to like actually have that happen in real time during the interview.
Yeah, yeah, and I love. I mean, I'm fortunate. I do a lot of walking in my neighborhood, and I shop at my local co-op, and there's the Italian center by my place, and I also have a great bakery called Good Bread not far away. My favorite restaurant around the bend, which people hear me mention regularly, is also not far, and so sometimes like I get to see. I get to see that stuff and see people there, right? At all of those places, I've bumped into people and gotten to have conversations because I'm out in my community. It's the same thing. I've been on the bus before, and I see a friend get on the bus, and I didn't know that they take this route. I don't normally take this route, but I'm sitting there, and I'm like, "Oh, hey, hey," and then they look and they say, "Oh, Alex, hey," and then we sit down and we get to have like a quick catch up. There was one friend. I hadn't seen him in maybe 2 years, and I happened to see him on the bus, and we got to ride together for 10, 15 minutes for that section of our shared commute, and it was awesome. It was so good. And so you started a podcast talking about community. It's called Happiness of the Commons. Can you tell us a little bit about how you started it, and what is the meaning of happiness of the commons? Where does that come from?
Yeah, so it's my friend, Katie McLean, who is a psychologist, and me, and we started it because we reconnected during COVID. We were both pregnant. She was pregnant with her first, I was pregnant with my second. And we are typical firstborn rule followers who were like and extroverts who were really, really struggling during COVID and like felt very isolated. And then we're like in postpartum, at a time when you like really need your village, and it felt like it wasn't safe to like access a lot of pieces of the village. And so we started just like talking about that all the time. We then like got off of Instagram DMs and started sending each other voice notes, and this theme of like community and like what it meant to us and like how we had like found our own little communities just kept being the central theme of all of these voice notes. And we were like, you know what? I think we should just start a podcast. And so we went for it. So we jumped in without much knowledge about like sound or like any of those things. So if you have listened to our podcast, the first few episodes are definitely like the sound is not great. We are continually working on it and trying to figure that out. I think it's getting better. But yeah, we came up with the name Happiness of the Commons. It comes from a book that I really loved, and kind of started my like original obsession with this idea of community. And a lot of the like themes were like around like little things that you can do. It's this book called Luca, I think it's pronounced. It's Lykke. And it's like the Danish quest for happiness, or like how they have like become such a happy nation. And I think he is part of the Happiness Institute, where they like researched what happiness means. Anyway, so the happiness of the commons phrasing is like a play on the fallacy, or what is it? The
tragedy of the commons. Yeah.
Yes. Which is like kind of, I think the main like thought behind it is that like I feel like it comes back to agriculture. And it's like if you gave someone land, then they would like take advantage of it in some way. And so like the happiness of the commons is trying to say like the opposite, where like it's basically like everything I believe, in that like if you give people the things that they need, like they will in turn like find ways to contribute in a good way to like other people and other parts of the community. That's like a very like layman's explanation that I have.
No, I think that's perfect, and I think your podcast is fantastic, and I always appreciate the conversations that you guys are having, and I think it's important to be having those conversations. And so maybe as we wrap up, one, I'll just quickly say like you can find Happiness of the Commons wherever you listen to your podcasts. But I also want to ask you, what are some small things that someone can start doing today to make some improvements to their community?
Yeah, so one of the main things that I talk about a lot, and that I'm like a very big proponent of, is the idea of like soft edges and like spending time in soft edges. And so what that really like means to me is we have this like frontage in front of our house. It's just like a square grass piece of land. And then there's the sidewalk. And so instead of going out in the summer and sitting in our backyard with our like 6-foot fence and just being like the two of us, I'll often say like, let's go sit out the front. And then all of the people who are walking their dogs or like gardening in their yard can like see us, and we're like part of the streetscape in a certain way. Like Sesame Street talks about this a lot. It's like the like sidewalk ballet of like these spaces are meant to be like public realm, but like they're in this like weird like half zone of like it is your private property, but like just putting yourself in that space and spending time there and like being open to just like not even having a conversation, but just like saying hi to your neighbors, I think goes a long way to like introducing yourself as like someone who is either like trusted or like wants to like be part of the community, and is like my favorite like very easy way of doing that, because it's like the main thing that might happen is that like you might try to introduce yourself to a neighbor who has like no interest in that, but then you know that like that neighbor is not someone that you're going to go to if your kid, or like not someone you're going to tell your kid to like go and like knock on so and so's door if you're in trouble. But like at least you've like kind of like fostered that little bit of community. And like some of the other things from the book that I really loved were like creating like a list of neighbors who would be interested being part of your community, and like maybe like what their skill is. And like having that like distributed on your street. Calgary has Neighbor Day, and I think you can apply for like anyone can apply for the grant, and you can like host a block party. But just like starting to like get out there and being visible and just like spending time in spaces that are like not quite public, but like on the edge of it.
Yeah, it's these like shared spaces and shared realm, and I think just getting out in your front yard is a great start that people can make. I mean, that's how I've met my neighbors is because I don't own a car. I walk out my front door and I walk to the bus and I walk to get my groceries or ride my bike. And so I see my neighbors' faces, and I've never gone, except for when I was campaigning last year. I've never like gone out of my way to go and knock on people's doors and introduce myself and say, "Hi, I'm so and so. I just moved into the neighborhood." All of my neighbors who I know and I interact with, and it's all the houses around me and some up and down the block. We know each other because Pat walks her dog every day. And so I see her out there. And then the family that lives across the street, they come and go often through their front door. And then I've met people at the park when I take my niece and nephew to the playground when I'm watching them, and I've made friends that way. And then my neighbors, they have a beautiful garden in their front yard, and so they're spending time out there, and so I see them regularly. And it's not like any of these people have become my best friends, but I know them and I trust them, and I know what their face looks like, and I've had a few conversations with them. And so I think that's a huge thing. I think that's a huge way to build community instead of trying to almost escape to like behind your castle walls because the
Yeah.
world is dark and scary. I think it's important to see the world as full of opportunities and full of lovely people who probably also are thinking, boy, I wish I had more community.
Yeah. And like some of the best like things that are like best for your health are those like little micro interactions. Like there's a lot of like more data coming out saying that like those micro interactions reduce like your risk of like heart disease and like lower your cholesterol, like all of these things that you wouldn't think are related, and just come from like that, like saying hi at the grocery store to the cashier, knowing the name of like the person who makes your coffee at the coffee shop down the street. Like all of those like little tiny things that seem like inconsequential are actually like part of building your like broader community.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic, and I really appreciate the some of the volunteer opportunities that I've taken advantage of, whether that's with Calgary Transit Riders, More Neighbors Calgary, Bike Calgary, being involved with these groups and doing that advocacy work, but then also like doing other things that don't involve urbanism necessarily
Yeah.
help to make my world a little bit more interconnected, right? I volunteer, I'm in a choir, and that helps build my community. I volunteer at Heritage Park, which is a large museum here in Calgary, and that helps build my community, both with the guests as well as with the other volunteers and employees there. And so it doesn't even have to be just getting involved in the housing advocacy organization. It can literally just be like getting involved in something in your community.
Something that you're like passionate about and like want to share with other people, because then you'll find other people who are like minded that also are really interested in that, and that is really awesome and gives you different perspectives because they're probably from a different part of the city. I do find that Calgary is like, in terms of community building, probably one of the easier places in some ways. Like everyone seems to know someone else. Like every single group that I've joined, it's been like, oh yeah, I went to high school with so and so, and they're like, oh, I went to like camp with them, or like after school, or like I swam with them. Like the world is like still so small in Calgary. I think it's really unique. I grew up in like Vancouver as well, and it doesn't have that same vibe. Like, and obviously I haven't done any advocacy in any other cities. Lived in Montreal for a little bit and in France, but not at a time when I like had the like even like wherewithal to think that I should do something like that. But yeah, I think it'd be really interesting to hear like how other people feel about groups like More Neighbors or transit riders advocacy or bike advocacy, whether they feel like it's like a very small niche community or if it's different.
Yeah, and I'm not sure, but I have made a lot of friends through these groups, right? Some of my best friends I've met through More Neighbors Calgary, and so I think it's a wonderful opportunity and place to get involved. I don't know what other cities advocacy looks like. That's kind of part of this podcast. Is I want to hear from other people, like what makes their city's advocacy unique. What are some unique wins that they're working on, or what's a unique project or way that they go about getting things done. So I'm really excited. If somebody listening is a local advocate in another city, I want to hear from you. Send me an email. My contact info is in the show notes. If somebody is or knows somebody who's an advocate or wants to be on the show, let me know. I want to hear from people, and I want to explore how other cities and other places are doing it. What's maybe last question here, and then we'll wrap up. What is like a uniquely Calgary thing? We talked about the community, but what's something else that you think about that might be a uniquely Calgary thing?
That's a good question. Um, it's so interesting because I feel like my Calgary experience is very, like, people will always comment that it's very different from most Calgarians' experiences, or like most people who like move to Calgary, in that like my high school friend group is all born and raised Calgarians. Um, and apparently that's really rare. like,
That's what people keep telling me, but
but I'm
I
like,
don't
I
know.
know a lot of born and raised Calgarians.
Yeah,
So I don't really like. It's hard because when you have lived here for so long, and like it's not like I haven't left and experienced other cities, but it's hard to know like what's a Calgary thing and what's not a Calgary thing. I will say, I guess, the main thing that I think is very talked about all the time is the like north versus like south Calgary view. Like I grew up in very far northwest Calgary, in one of the like very new communities at the time in the 90s. Uh, and when we were looking for houses, like we were like typical North Calgary kids who were like, we looked in Bankview a little bit, I think, which is like just south of the Beltline. And I think that might be the only south address that we even considered. Like, it's so interesting and how prevalent it is that people are like, I know the north or like I know the south and I would like never go to the other one. Like,
yeah. This is the realest thing, and everybody has a different dividing line
yeah.
of what like when does the city become north and when does the city become south. I grew up in the deep southeast,
Yeah.
and so this was always like a big thing for me. I remember Glenmore Trail. That was the line. If somebody looks at a map of Calgary and you see Glenmore Trail, everything north of that was North Calgary, even though like it is very much in the south. But that in my mind, the only things that existed north of Glenmore Trail were the Calgary Zoo and the Foothills Hospital, because those were the only two places that I ever went north of Glenmore Trail until I was like 20. And I remember I moved to the Northwest. I moved to Brentwood.
Oh, wow.
And I genuinely I felt like I moved to the other side of the planet. Like I may as well have moved to like South Africa or something, because I was like, I'm never gonna see my family again.
No, it's so true.
Yeah, that is yeah,
And
I'll
as
be
someone who grew up in the far north, to me, everything north is like north of Memorial Drive. And then downtown is like even though it's like technically south addresses, is like middle zone. And then I think Lindsay Park for me is where like the south starts.
Interesting. Interesting. This is so fascinating. I'll probably turn this into a reel, and we can ask people on Instagram what their take is on where their dividing line is. I think it'd be interesting to get some data and like get people to draw it on a map. Not what they now know as adults are like the dividing lines. Like this is Center Street. This is the like, but to actually go through and say like as a kid, as a child growing up here, how did you view the quadrants of the city?
Yeah.
Where did different things fit? I think that'd be really interesting. Anyways, that's a great note to end things on. Alanna, thank you so much for joining me. I'm gonna have links to all of your Instagram accounts in the show notes as well. People can follow you on Blue Sky, I think, right?
I have one Blue Sky account. I'm like, I can't do a million of them like I do for Instagram.
Yeah, no, Instagram. You've got a lot of branded things out there, but I appreciate you having this conversation with me and sharing your love for our city and your love for cycling and improving our neighborhoods.
Yeah, thanks for having me.